Welcome to MSP Voice, the weekly show for MSPs by MSPs. Brought to you by MSP 360, the #1 cross-platform cloud backup. Learn more at msp360.com. This is MSP Voice. Hello and welcome to MSP Voice. This is episode number 60. Today, my guest is Marvin Bee, who you may know from his popular podcast called Podnutz Pro. It's another MSP-focused podcast. But I actually talked to Marvin about his MSP business and how he got started and all those types of things. So definitely take a listen for that. Some housekeeping, mspvoice.com, your source for all things MSP Voice. I did a webinar last week with VCIO Toolbox. That recording is now up on the blog. So definitely check that out. VCIO Toolbox, they've created a process as well as a platform to really help you work with your clients through that quarterly business review process and be a true CIO to your customers. We've also got all the past episodes on there. And as always, just click the Be the Next Guest and fill out the form. And you too could be a featured guest here on MSP Voice. Love to have you on. A couple of news items this week. I'm not doing anything on security. This first item is, it's kind of interesting. It's out of Bermuda. And I included it because I like how it's basically the local paper, the Royal Gazette. They feature a story about a new managed service provider bringing innovation to managed IT services. And this is just kind of another example of, hey, for advertisement, if you can get in good with the local press, you got an interesting story to tell, they might write a story about you, and it's great exposure and great coverage. So this team, they're just getting started. They formed Gnosis, I think. The G is silent, I believe. And they've got a couple of things that they do a little bit differently. They have flexible rollover hours, so the business with unused hours on its IT managed service can roll them over from month to month, and a couple of other things. But I just thought it was kind of interesting. Now, obviously, Bermuda is a smaller market than, if you're trying to get into the New York Times, it's probably a lot more difficult. But again, if you're in a small area, local paper, hey, see if you can make friends with a reporter and show you some of your expertise, and maybe they'll do a story on you and your team, as well as your services. Next up is an interesting thing. It's actually a tweet that I saw from IT Glue. And if you're going to GlueX, I will be there as well. So that's coming up here in a couple of weeks in September. But IT Glue has put together a 2019 Global MSP Benchmark Report. You do have to register in order to download it. No, I'm not going to provide you a download. But it kind of goes over some of the financial performance of MSPs, so you can see how you're doing compared to others. What kind of concerns you might have in your technology stack, issues related to hiring, training, and turnover, how many specialize in verticals. And I was actually surprised that the majority don't specialize in verticals in terms of this report, so as well as some challenges and opportunities for growth. So if you're interested, hit the link, put in all your information, and you can download it. I think it's about 27 pages. It's packed with useful information in terms of the IT market. Another item is from our sponsor, MSP 360. But I wanted to point this out because it's something that comes up quite a bit, is in terms of conversational cloud backups for MSPs. So what this little guide does, it's available via PDF if you click the link and again, put in your details, but you download it, gives you the PDF. And part of what's interesting about this is it talks about cloud-based backups, but then it also, kind of talks about the fact that not all cloud storage services are the same, some things to look out for, some reasons why you might want to choose one over the other, because each one is different, but each one has its pluses and minuses. So it's a nice, handy little guide. We are going to have printed copies of this available at some point as well at shows. So definitely check out the MSP 360 booth. If you're at a show, we might have a hard copy in a little pamphlet form. So check that out. And finally, just another shout out to Marvin and his Podnutz Pro podcast. There's a link here, but check it out. He's got way more episodes than I do. He gets way more technical than I do. It's a great podcast. He's a great host, and he's also a great guest. So with that, I will turn it over now to the interview, and have a great week. Hello and welcome. Today, I am pleased to be joined by Marvin Bee with MB Systems out of South Florida. I'm in St. Pete. You're down in the Fort Lauderdale area, I believe.
Yes, I am.
Great.
Fort Lauderdale proper.
Yes, so we were talking about the weather a little bit before we started here. It's like you said, it's summer in Florida, so it's the rainy season.
Yes. And by rainy season, that means it'll rain for 10, 15 minutes, be sunny, then rain, then sunny.
Yeah, that's typically, but for some reason here the last several days it's just been cloudy and it rains a lot more than just 15 minutes. But oh well. We're
East Coast versus West Coast.
Yeah, we're not underwater yet, so we're good.
All right.
So Marvin, tell us a little bit about yourself after that brief little intro that we just did there.
So as many of you know, I am Marvin from MB Systems. I host another podcast, which you have been on.
Yes.
A couple of times, so figured it was time to reciprocate and be on your show. But to talk a little bit about what I do. So my business, I started in 1997, mainly to piss off my boss at the time. I worked at a computer repair store, and even though we were huge in the service area, he did not believe in on-site visits. So anytime somebody would come in and ask for us to go to their office or their house, he would say no, but he would allow for us to go after hours as long as we purchased our product from him. Which, when I first started, I thought, oh, that was great. I don't have to go, looking for stuff. And then I realized he was charging us twice as much as other places. So I said, I think I can do pretty good here. And we were driving in the car one day back from a networking meeting, and I was telling him about my ideas and what we should do. And he kind of looked at me and said, no, that'll never work. And I said, okay, well, maybe I'll go and do it myself. And he said, nah, I don't think you have what it takes. You'll never make it.
Uh-oh.
So that was a Tuesday. The following Monday, I had my plan, I had my resignation letter, and I was gone.
Oh, that's great. And that was 97, so it's been a few years. 22, if my math is correct right now. So obviously you made it.
I made it. Yep. And his business did not.
Okay. Have you seen him? Did you ever talk to him after you got going?
I did. Wow. So I saw him a couple of times because his business, it was basically a used computer store.
Okay.
So we sold new and used computers, and it was probably the service repair shop in our area. So everybody went there. So anytime I had stuff where, I knew somebody wanted a refurbished machine or whatever, I sent them to him. So I still gave him business.
Okay.
And if I couldn't find something, either through my vendors or through retail or whatever, chances are he had it in his warehouse because he would buy truckloads of, closeouts and businesses. So he had a lot of old stuff. So we still talked a lot. And he actually approached me maybe 3 or 4 years after I left and wanted to partner.
Oh.
Because he saw the writing on the wall with his type of business and needed to figure out a way to roll over into the business side of it. I had done pretty well in that. So he wanted to partner. We couldn't seem to agree on stuff. So that's, we parted ways. And that was, 15, 18 years ago.
Wow. So before you worked for him, did you have a career in IT before that?
I did not.
Okay.
I am the reluctant IT guy. So, my years of growing up was actually spent in sports.
Okay.
A lot of football, basketball, track, softball, student government, a lot of clubs. And I thought computers were for the geeks. And somehow it ended up that I was good at computers. And the way I found that out was in college, my roommate was head of the computer lab.
Oh.
And so we would have computer stuff just all over the floor, all over our dorm. And he'd be trying to figure stuff out. And it was funny because there were things that I could figure out that he couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that led me to doing tutorials in the computer lab and starting to build computers and things of that nature. And it just kind of stuck with me. I ended up, writing a database program for our used book sale in college, translated that to my admissions department in grad school. And my first job out of grad school was a marketing job, but I still built computers on the side and would sell them to that computer repair store that I ended up working for.
Okay.
Because he would say to me whenever I came in, he said, "You build computers better than my guys. When are you going to come work for me?" And I said, "When you can afford to pay me what I'm making now." And took him about a year or so, but then he finally called up and said, "Okay, I can pay you. When can you start?" And that's how I got into the computer industry.
Oh, cool. So, everyone has a different path,
Yep.
and so it sounds like your path was not necessarily what you'd planned out for, but it looks like it's done you well so far.
It has.
Yeah. So do you still, in terms of your business, MB Systems, do you consider yourself managed services, purely managed services, or do you do break fix? Are you transitioning?
So I call myself a hybrid still.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would say that probably 50 to 75% of my business is MSP. And to me, that just means that I've got my customers on a monthly service plan of some sort.
Yeah.
I've got them set up in my management board, and I use my RMM tools for that.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a lot of customers that are purely break fix. And, I've had most of my customers for 10, 15 years or more.
Great.
So I just can't force them over to the new model.
Yeah.
And as long as they're good customers, I will continue to support them. Now, there are some that I have kind of said, well, we need to do a contract, and
Mm-hmm.
they've either decided not to, or I just didn't call them anymore. But I'm a hybrid. So I like I said, probably, 50 to 75%. And I'm just saying that number just because I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's, sometimes it's good to have a mix, right? And, sometimes those break fix customers, they finally see the value in going month to month, and then they become MSP customers. So,
well, it's nice to get full retail price.
Yeah.
Full hourly rate. So it doesn't hurt.
Great. So speaking of your customers, do you kind of specialize in any verticals, or are you kind of all over the place on that?
So I got lucky when I started the business. Probably about a year after I started it, I fell into the auto body industry. And I would say 90% of my customers at that time were body shops that I got through the paint companies. And right around 2001, 2002, I ran into a software consultant for a law firm. And I kind of flipped it to where the bulk of my customers now are law firms. And I guess I can say I specialize in the legal field.
Okay.
They're probably 80% of my business, but I do have some others. But yeah, so law firms is what I do mostly.
Great. And so just thinking about tools and software that you use for your business, because I know we've talked before, and I know you've got some tools that are very important to your business and what you do, but then also software. What can any advice you have there for tools and software?
Well, so in terms of advice, is get the best tools you can.
Yeah.
Is pretty much it. And so I guess I'm pretty much known for the handheld networking tools, the cable testers, the network diagnostics. And that came about because I got tired of arguing with the cable guys about whether their cable was good or not. And I don't know how many times I argued with them, but I finally said, I've got to figure out a way to test these myself. And so I bought my first cable tester. It was about $1,000. And I thought that was just outrageous. But what it did was it made it to where I didn't have to argue with them anymore. I could just simply test the cables and show them, because a lot of the cable guys didn't have their own testers.
Okay.
So that's what started me into basically learning to invest in tools. And, yeah, they're a lot of money sometimes, but if you get the right tools at the right time, they can save you in the long run.
Yeah.
And so I am a big proponent now of buying tools that make your job easier, faster, and that's what I do.
Okay. I may call you and have you come up in a couple of weeks. They're starting the wiring on my new house. And so I might need have you come up here and keep them honest.
Okay. That'll work.
Yeah, we're having, Cat 6 run, everywhere, and it's all terminating because I don't want to deal with wireless completely, especially with AV and all those types of things. So,
oh yeah, true.
A lot of wiring.
You want good quality wiring.
Yes. So, in terms of, getting new customers, right? You talked about, the legal field and it's kind of your specialty. Do you do any kind of proactive advertising to get out there and try to get new customers, or you just pretty much rely on word of mouth and networking?
So I wouldn't say proactive marketing.
Mhm.
It's more passive
Okay.
aggressive marketing. So I got lucky when I got those original clients where everything was word of mouth and referrals, and they were good referrals. Now, most of it comes from either the consultants in the legal field, because they're the ones that are actually out talking to their customers.
Okay.
And they run into situations all the time where, either the existing tech can't figure things out and they're like, well, I know a guy, and I get called in for that. And then the company will be like, well, why don't you do our tech instead of who's doing it now?
Okay.
So I still get a lot of that. And because of that, I really don't have to right now. And now, granted, I still want to keep, my name and my brand out there. So I still do some networking and stuff like that, but I don't do any active marketing campaigns or anything like that. I've been lucky in the fact that when I get customers, one, they're good customers, and two, they stay with me for a long time. Just, hopefully it's not all luck, and that I'm doing a good enough job to keep them, but it's worked.
Great. So, yeah, I had muted there for a moment because there was a fire truck going by. So apologize for that.
As long as it was going by and not flying.
Yeah, it's not coming here. So, you talked about investing in tools and the networking tools you like and the handhelds. What other advice do you have for someone who's looking to get started in services?
Wow. So I guess the biggest, I don't even know if I can call it a list, but obviously, it's easier to start in tech nowadays than it was when I got started.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many resources, so many people that are willing to help. Back in my day, people weren't willing to help. So, aligning yourselves with, partners and other techs is a good thing. But I would still say you've got to really educate yourself. Don't just, get started and think you'll figure it out as you go. This industry moves way too fast if you don't have a plan.
Yeah.
And, you've got to educate yourself, have a plan. And sometimes that means you've got to pick an area and stick with it, mm-hmm. and not try to do everything.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like a specialty, right? You can either specialize in a certain technology or certain area, but then it's also the idea of verticals as well.
Right.
You ask people, some are like, oh, don't do verticals, and others say, hey, you thrive in verticals. But it sounds like everyone I've talked to, it seems to be most people say, if you've got a vertical, if you're good in an area, stick to it.
I think that's good advice. It's especially because most of the verticals nowadays, they have their built-in marketing for you.
Mm-hmm.
They have their community events, they have conferences, they have letters. And I mean, if you get in at the right place at the right time, a lot of that can be done for you.
Yeah, definitely. So speaking about, you mentioned, getting help from others and those types of things from a community perspective. Now, I know, you've got your podcast and you talk a lot about, stuff on there. But where do you like hang out in terms of community? What, whether it's online or conferences, what are some of the big ones that you like?
Oh, hang out. first of all, you got to make some time to hang out. But
Yeah.
um, so I think I do pretty much a lot of what everybody else does. So, I belong to ASCII, I belong to CompTIA.
Hmm.
So I do try to go to those events when they're close by. Uh, I have been involved in the forums. So community forums like TechNibble and Reddit.
Hmm.
I'm not on them as much, but that's where I got a lot of my start was, getting online, searching for stuff, getting to the forums. Um, I've recently been in the Facebook.
Okay.
There's a lot of those groups that are popping up, so I've been in those. But I think the biggest thing that has really helped in the last, I'd say, 5 years is the Podnutz community where I do the podcast. That has been a community where they have been engaged in a lot of these other events.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had technicians and business owners be so willing to reach out and offer advice and offer help and share stories, just simply because I'm in Podnutz or because they heard me on a podcast.
Yeah.
Just today, I was talking to a couple of listeners where we've shared stories about vendors that they've used from being on the show, and they felt that it was easy to reach out to me and tell me stuff and update me on stuff.
Okay.
As I wouldn't get that just by showing up at a conference or anything like that. So, that has just been, I'm going to say, the Podnutz community right now, it's a small community.
Mm-hmm.
It's not made up of, the big MSPs,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some in there. There are computer repair shop owners in there, but it is a real good community. It's almost like my peer group.
Okay.
So
Great. Yeah. And it's free membership, right?
for now.
So I think ChannelCon next year, CompTIA ChannelCon, I think that's going to be in Miami.
It sure is.
So
I've already had somebody reach out to me to see if I'm going to go and if we can hang out. So
yeah, because I'm guessing you weren't in Vegas last week.
I was not in Vegas.
I didn't see you. So
I was actually in Bloomington, Indiana last week at another conference.
Oh, okay. Cool. In terms of, what you do, what is the favorite part of your job and what keeps you motivated every day?
Wow. Favorite part of my job. So it used to be having a customer say thank you. I mean, it was one of those things where the tech industry, you rarely get thank yous from customers. You definitely hear from them when things don't go right.
Mm-hmm.
So that used to be the big thing. I think now, going back to what I talked about in terms of hanging out, the camaraderie and the friendships and the, just the peer group mentality that there are people standing side by side in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
We're sharing the same stories, the same pitfalls, and helping each other out. For some reason, in the last couple of years, that has actually overtaken anything that I'm doing business-wise with my customers.
Okay.
I think that's been it for me, at least.
Cool. Great. What's the worst thing? What makes you dread getting out of bed some mornings?
I think it's more of not necessarily the worst thing, but the things that I worry about is that we're in a time where the industry is changing so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And the technologies that we're learning right now may not be around in a year. And it's making it hard for us to do our jobs. And I'm not just talking about, updates and changes in software. We're talking about, changes in the industry where vendors are partnering up and changing software and changing our monthly plans without notice and things like that. It's just, it is so fast that it's hard to keep up with. So I have a feeling that there are some technicians out there who are just finding it hard to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to spend just as much time educating ourselves on new things that are coming out, testing new softwares, testing new tools, learning new platforms. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and with as much private equity money that is being poured into this industry and the mergers and acquisitions that happen because of it, right? Something you're using today may get deprecated tomorrow because they got acquired and that's
Mm-hmm.
not part of their new company strategy. So now you got to find something new.
Yeah. I mean, I had one tool that literally got changed 3 times in 18 months
Mm.
because the company got acquired.
Yeah.
And I liked the first tool, and then it got changed and bought, and then it got, swallowed up by another tool.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I had a choice.
Yep.
It was, you either change or you find something new.
Yeah.
And it's just tough because not only am I forced to make that change, but I've got customers that are tied to those systems and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got, most of the time they don't know.
Yeah.
But when they do know, or when they have, admin access into a tool and they've got to make a change, it's a little frustrating because they're screaming at me. Why do we have to do this? And just do it.
Yeah, it's just part of what happens.
Yeah.
Cool. So, from a technology perspective, what are the technologies that you're most excited about, whether it's consumer or work related, now or in the future? What are some of the things that you're excited about?
Well, first I need to qualify this because I'm not a geeky guy, not a gadget guy.
Okay.
So I don't get caught up in the consumerism of the latest smartphone or gadget or anything like that. I think what has excited me has been finding ways to do my job better and faster.
Okay.
So, now I'm back focused on what I should have been focused on years ago, and that's automation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd already spent, the last few years finding the tools, the physical tools, like, the duplicators and the network testers and the, analyzers. But now I've got to find ways to be able to script out things so I can deploy things faster and, set better monitoring scripts and things of that nature. So that's the kind of area right now where that's what excites me.
Okay.
And it's because I can see a immediate return in whether it's saved time or, extra billable hours or something like that. That's what's doing it right now.
Okay. What about technology that you're concerned about?
The things that don't do that. the things that make my job harder, or things that take away my control.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Where I may have visibility into customers a certain way, and I may be able to do things to them, but then a tool will change or update or go away, like you said, deprecate,
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do it anymore. That frustrates me because it's one of the things that I've disliked about this industry is that sometimes when companies or people think that they're making things better, they're actually making it worse for us. And it's mind-boggling sometimes to think, what was wrong with what we did before? If it works, if it ain't broke, don't fix.
Yeah.
But it's almost like, well, we have to do something to justify charging you more.
Yeah. I'm coming at it from the vendor side, working for software companies for a number of years. And, unfortunately, sometimes the technology makes you change. The technology you're supporting, you have to make changes. You've got to keep up to date on all the latest and greatest. So it's you're constantly chasing your tail, matter from the vendor or from the customer.
But I think from most vendor standpoints, it's not as big a deal. For instance, I mean, I know we don't talk vendors that much on your show, but I mean, Cloudberry is a perfect example where the things that you've done have made our lives easier and better. And, at least I haven't heard anybody complain about you. I don't know if I will now, but I mean, I haven't heard that, but there are others out there. And I don't think that it's more of the software, I'm trying not to name names, Microsoft. It's, you push out updates that break things.
Yeah.
The quality control is gone.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Well, agile development now, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, got to be on the bleeding edge.
Yes.
Trust me, the people bleeding are us. The other thing I was going to mention that, now granted, I don't think anything is going to change soon, but I think some vendors are doing a really good job of making it to where we aren't competing with the vendor
Yeah.
on the internet. The fact that, I wanted to quote a customer, a new NAS drive, and, I tell the customer the price. It's a, Synology NAS with, 6 terabytes worth of data in a RAID 1 configuration. And I tell him the price, it's, $979. And he comes right back and says, "Oh, I see these drives on Amazon for $200.
Yeah.
And I'm like, first of all, you don't know what you're looking at. But two, it makes it hard when the customers can go look at the stuff and think that, we don't know what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know it seems to be, obviously on the hardware side, because the margins on hardware have just been pushed so thin now, to be in the, reselling hardware type business, to support your customers, it is frustrating. And, and then like you said, on the software side, as long as the vendor isn't publishing their prices, for their services, it does make it easier for the managed service providers to say, well, this is how much it costs.
Right.
It's always been an issue in channel is, can they find it cheaper somewhere or by going direct?
Yes.
And that's what we call channel conflict. So okay. So are you ready for the rapid fire round?
The rapid fire. Yes, I am.
Yes. Okay. We got 6. It's pretty easy. All right, here we go. Apple or Android?
Apple.
Okay. Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Windows.
Amazon, Azure, or something else?
Something else.
Okay. Local backups, cloud, or both?
Both.
Okay. Should you always virtualize?
No.
Okay. And finally, which is worse, printer support or vendor cold calls?
Really? Sometimes they're both. Vendor cold calls.
Okay. Great. Yeah, it's 50-50 on that one. So some people, they're like, hey, I can hang up on a vendor, but that darn those printers drive me nuts.
Sometimes the printer support is by the vendors, and that's why I said that.
Oh, okay. So before we leave, any last parting words, tips, or tricks you have for the community out there?
Let's see. Last words. I'll just go back to something I said earlier. If you're just starting out, just be prepared. The old Boy Scout motto. Figure things out, educate yourself, plan ahead, and invest in the proper tools.
Great. That sounds great to me. So Marvin, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, have a great week.
All righty. You too.